All right, I'm going to call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Councilors Pitts,
Here.
Mo,
Here.
Rodley,
Here.
Stair,
Here.
Woodrow,
Here.
and Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
We have multiple items tonight, which are all interviews. It's everybody's favorite night here at City Council. Looks like the first group up is for Arts Commission with Emily.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Emily David, Director of the Library and the Museum, and I am here to first introduce the candidate for the Springfield Arts Commission. So Jose Antonio Huerta has applied for a second term. He completed a partial term of, I believe, 1 year. And he is the one applicant to be interviewed this evening for the Arts Commission.
Okay, before we are ready, I guess to clarify, well, one question, and this may be a Nancy question, is the recommendation that we sort of do all the interviews for both nights and then settle on who goes to which board? Or should we be doing these as we go?
Well, Mayor, that's a good question because I think overall in the process, there may be some candidates that we have more applicants than open positions. So for those where it's, there's enough positions, I think you could probably just go ahead and make that determination. But you may want also to, it's up to you really, you may want to wait until you talk to everybody, because if there is not an opening in one particular area, they may have an interest somewhere else too, as we work through these boards and commissions.
All right, so I'm going to look kind of around for the council for kind of head nods. I think we just want to work our way through it, especially places where we don't have, where we don't have as many candidates as we do spots. Is maybe I'll check in and see if you guys want to head nod that this group looks good, so that we don't end up at the end and have notes from 25 different folks to sort through. The other thing I was going to recommend tonight is just to let me ask all the questions so people can concentrate on just writing notes. That way we don't do the round robin because there's a shorter list of questions.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Mayor, just to clarify with the Arts Commission, there were 3 openings and 1 application. And Antonio goes by Antonio.
Any other questions before we let Antonio in here? All right, let's bring him on in. Antonio, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Hello. We're gonna go and do a quick round of introductions, and then we'll we'll get to the questions. So I'm Sean Van Gordon, I'm the mayor, and we'll go by wards real quick.
I'm Damian Pitts, Ward 1.
I'm Steve Moe, Ward 2.
Ray Rodley, Ward 3.
Hi, Antonio. Leonard Stair, Ward 4.
Marilee Woodrow, Ward 5.
Joe Pictionary, I'm Ward 6, which is the Thurston area.
All right, Antonio, the plan for tonight is I'm going to ask the questions and these fine folks are going to take some notes. So why are you interested in serving on the Arts Commission?
Well, as a sort of newly resident of Springfield, I want to get in the community and particularly in the arts. I think in general, the arts are, or the arts are underrepresented by people of color, and I would like to diversify, share a little bit my experience as an artist. I am a charro or Mexican horseman, and I would love to bridge more connection and communication with the Spanish-speaking community of Springfield with the city. So this position is exciting for me on many levels.
Perfect. Could you describe your understanding of the role you will be serving on the Arts Commission and how it relates to the work on council?
I have worked on, or I have been on the Arts Commission for the past year, I believe, and while it is a learning process, still I very much enjoy the arts work, and I think Springfield has a lot of potential on many levels, and again, because of my particular interest in the arts and cultures, the idea of connecting, bridging communication from the Arts Commission to the broader Springfield community is of very strong interest to me, and I'd love to see more underserved communities or people from underserved communities be more involved in these kinds of activities. So I hope, again, it's a process, but I hope that we can build more connections, and I think the serving on the Arts Commission provides an opportunity for that.
And what do you see as the current issues and challenges for the city of Springfield as it relates to arts?
Again, I think the arts or people of color in general are chronically underrepresented, particularly in the arts. And I think the Springfield or the city of Springfield is no exception to that. So again, I'd love to build more engagement and see more people of color involved in the arts.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to let you go, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the appointment, and then somebody will be in touch. Have a great night.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. So before we move on, I believe, Emily, this was one person for 3 spots, correct? So we're going to.
There's 2 more spots. I believe one is a partial and one is a full term. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the council to see if everybody's comfortable here or if they just want to wait on discussing it. Leonard.
I just wanted to say Antonio has served the commission with distinction, and he's a Mexican horseman. I mean, I don't see where I need to say anything else.
All right. Anybody else want to make some comments? I see some thumbs up, Steve.
We have a large Latinx community in our city, and this would be a good addition to our arts for their culture.
Okay. I'm kind of seeing some head nods. So Corey.
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of reappointing Antonio to the Arts Commission.
All right. So I think we can let him know, and then you guys can plan on putting it on the agenda for a public hearing. All right. I think you are next with Library Advisory Board. Emily, you got the good deal. You both got yours back to back.
I'm actually 1, 2, and 3 tonight. So you'll, here I am. Yes, so this is for the Library Advisory Board. We have 2 openings on the board. One is a full term. The other is the remaining 2 years of a term from somebody that had to leave earlier this year because they were moving. We had 3 applicants. One did withdraw because she got a new job. So 2 applicants are interviewing tonight. And the first one is Robin Loudon.
All right, I think we're ready.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Well, I'm going to skip introduction since they didn't have you in the waiting room. So I'm assuming you heard the first round, if you will.
I did, yes.
Oh, excellent. Why are you interested in serving on the library advisory board?
Yeah, so I'm a public educator. I'm a local public educator. So personally, very passionate about the library and how it's not just a place for literacy, but it provides lots of other additional services. Excuse me, we're joined by both of my dogs as well tonight. So when I saw the opening, it really fits into what I do. I'm a special education teacher. So in particular, literacy is very important to me, and access to books and other services is important to me. And then just personally, the library during quarantine did kind of, I don't know, keep me very grounded. And I feel like I owe it a debt of gratitude in some way. But yes, those are my two main interests.
All right, perfect. Describe your understanding of the role you will serve on the library board and how it relates to the work on the council.
That's a interesting question. And so it's my understanding that the library board kind of serves as like an advisory to the council. So we would look at like policies and procedures, and then different fundraising goals, promotional access, things like that. I think as like a special education teacher and a resident of Springfield and a longtime educator in the area, I can bring a sense of how to like another community that could benefit from those services, and advising on how to outreach to that community as well.
What do you see as current issues and challenges for the city of Springfield related to library services?
I just think that like usage and access are really key. I'm sure that we have, a population that requires lots of supports that librarians are often providing, and just making sure that those programs are well funded and that they're also accessible for a wider community. So the disabled community, the deaf and hard of hearing community, the homeless community, all of those different types of populations, and how can we make sure that they have equal access to those services as well? I'm sure it's a huge challenge right now.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready for the next person, Emily.
Okay, and so Barbara von Deither, and Barbara, I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, is the next candidate.
Start no.
Hello, Barbara.
I'm working on it. Can you see me all right?
We can see you.
All right.
All right.
Get that light overhead. All right. How is everybody tonight?
Oh, we're doing great. We're just.
It stopped raining out here finally.
All right. Are you ready for your questions?
I'm ready for my questions.
Outstanding. Why are you interested in serving on the library advisory board?
I have been associated with libraries my entire professional life. My first job was at Utah State University as the assistant to the graduate dean, and I was monitoring all theses and dissertations that left the institution for the dean. And my office was smack in the middle of the Merrill Library. So I have a professional interest in libraries, particularly the Springfield Library, because of course now I am living in Springfield and I'm on the outskirts. There isn't much room for Springfield to expand much more out the parkway probably. So the tax base is not going to increase that much. That means your librarians, who have done a wonderful job of getting the library through a pandemic, It's only the second one since 2018. Let's see, it would 1819 or 1918 it would be. So the tax base isn't going to increase. But when I look at the statistics for the library, your wonderful librarians and the advisory board have brought this library through in one piece. It's almost unbelievable. You have the same staff as you've had before. You've got about the same amount of money. It's apparently very well spent. However, I think the library faces some problems coming up in the future as the population slightly changes here in Springfield, and there will need to be some adjustments to that collection and perhaps in the way services are rendered. And I always like a challenge, and I'd love to be in on that.
All right, perfect. Can you describe your understanding of the role you will be serving on the library advisory board and how it relates to the work on council?
Yes, usually an advisory board is not there to make decisions, but to make suggestions. They take an overall view of the way the population in which it finds itself existing. In other words, the advisory board, which is deliberately chosen from all over the city of Springfield to make sure that each part of Springfield is represented. So what is the objective of having them is to make sure that they understand and bring to the table the concerns of the specific area that they're representing. I'm representing the outskirts of Springfield where there isn't much more growth to go, but it's the only growth that Springfield has available because almost everything else is in a floodplain. So there will be a minor increase in the tax base coming into Springfield from new construction. That means that the library is going to be constrained, as are all public services, by a budget that's not increasing. It's going to be almost stable. That's going to increase the pressure on everyone who is working for the library. So again, the advisory board is there to look at the overall situation in which the library finds itself, takes into consideration all of the constituents parts of that, and then comes up with advisement as to how the library should proceed to meet its commitments.
And what else do you see as current issues and challenges for the library?
Number one is, I think, is going to be budget. As I said, the tax base is not going to increase much because there isn't going to be that much new construction. Springfield is almost at build out. Out here where I am at the end of the Bob Stroud Parkway, there's a little bit of land to the left and the right of the Bob Stroud Parkway that can be built on, but almost everything else is in a floodplain. Yes, you can build in a floodplain, but it imposes economic constraints on those who do it because the insurance in a floodplain is huge. So I don't think we're going to see that much before Springfield is theoretically at build out. What that means is no increase in the tax base, or unless the taxes increase, you're going to have to go out and scrounge them up. And you know how the public feel about raises in their taxes. I've talked to so many people through the years who don't understand that the taxes pay for the roads they drive on. They pay for the schools. Those taxes pay for the police. Those taxes pay for just about everything. And people just take it for granted that those things are there. They don't realize that the money they're sending in taxes, that's where it's coming from. So they resent any kind of increase in the taxes because they don't understand that it's giving them the environment in which they find themselves. So without an increase in the tax base, each person and each department of the city is going to have to work very hard to stay within budget and find new ways to increase what they have. Now, for the library is concerned, I would perceive that donations, and I'm not talking about books because most libraries get all the extra books they want as people donate their home libraries. I remember we used to have a problem with them, but as they become more constrained between increasing the collection and the fact that the tax base is not going to increase, it's going to make every penny count is going to be a problem with the library board and with the library staff. Emily David, by the way, I want my commendations to her for bringing this library through with 8 employees, what she started with. It's unbelievable. When I look through the statistics, all I can see is a group of very nice people who have done a wonderful job bringing that library through a difficult time. I'm impressed. So my commendations to Emily David for what she's done.
All right, perfect. That was the last question. So we are going to let you go. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and we will let you know what we decide.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, God, that was stupid.
So just for the record, I want to clarify that we do have 14 staff dedicated to the library specifically. So that.
Okay, do we want to talk about appointments now, or do we want to wait on this one? Leonard?
I'm ready to talk about them now.
And jump
So-
into it. What's your
Yeah,
take?
all right. So I think Barbara is clearly very passionate about the budget, about the city budget, and I think it would be a great idea to have her back to apply for one of the positions on the budget committee when they come open. I was beginning to wonder if she was going to talk about books, and she finally did. And question number 3, but I think that Robbins actually seems very passionate about education and books, and I think that might serve the library commission a little better.
Emily?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make one clarifying point between the 2 candidates. So Barbara is from Ward 5, and we have no representation from Ward 5. And Robin is from Ward 3, and we do have a couple other people on the board who are from Ward 3. So I just wanted that to be part of the consideration.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead, Marilee.
Yeah, I think Barbara has had conversation. I enlisted her, so I'll put my name in there on that one, looking for somebody to represent Ward 5. But I think Barbara also got involved with talking to people in regards to the foundation, which it makes her look at the budget and look at issues regarding the library and library services and stuff. So I think that on her behalf, I will clarify why her focus ended up being on that is that she attended some meetings and heard the conversation in regards to that. So the focus from the meetings put her frame of mind into how do we keep and maintain and maybe even make better the library services that are available. So that was her orientation, and that comes from conversation I had after she had gone to a meeting. So just to clarify why that ended up being a focal point for her. I'm comfortable with both applicants. I think they would both do us well.
I support that.
Joe?
Thank you, Sean. I'm totally fine with both applicants. I think that she will add some diversification, which we're all clamoring for within the committee. And that with her mind on even the financing of it, I think that is be a valuable input in regards to conversations on that committee, as opposed to everybody focused on one thing about people reading in books. So I think there's more to the committee than just that. So I support them both.
Leonard?
Are there 2 openings?
Yes.
Yes.
Then absolutely both.
All right. Emily, I think you've got your sort of marching orders to let them know, and go ahead and write it up for the public hearing. Go ahead.
Does the council want to make a recommendation on the 2-year versus the 4-year? Because one of them is a partial term, or do you want the board to do that?
Joe?
I think I would recommend asking them which one would be interested in the longer term than the shorter term to see. And if you have a person that prefers a longer term, then I'm fine with that. If you have a draw, then I would ask to see if they have, for example, with the last applicant, that potentially would be a great candidate for another committee that is more budget focused. But I would just ask them, do you want to serve on the 4 or 2? And I'm good with either one that says either way.
All right,
Okay.
outstanding. I think we're ready for your third round.
Okay. So Maddie McGraw, who's listed, is she has Mondays off, so I told her I'd be here anyway. So I'm introducing the candidates for the museum committee. And so the museum committee had 3 openings and received 2 applications from Zach Goza-Lewis and Stacy Roth. Stacy Roth is reapplying. She has had has completed a full term. And I believe the first applicant is let's see, Zach Goza-Lewis.
Hello, Zach.
Hi, Mayor Van Gordon. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm going to be asking the questions. And then everybody else is going to be taking notes accordingly. Are you ready to get started?
Sure am, thank you.
Why are you interested in serving on the museum committee?
Looking at the mission of the committee, I really identify with what they're trying to get across, and not just getting folks into the actual physical space, but being able to talk about the history and where the city has been, where it's going, and how we can use that as a really positive tool to connect the different populations. I've been fortunate enough to hear the other folks that have been interviewed and seeing the different areas, the different communities that are growing. I see that museum being something that could be a centralized location, utilized for events. I know they do a lot of that already, but just having that space be more frequently traveled is the baseline, but being able to take that and push it out for cultural events, be in support. And much like they did this month with the Hispanic Heritage Month, for October, being able to use that as a hub that when people say, hey, why are we doing this mural? Well, at the library, we have an exhibit that talks about it. You know, at the museum, we have an exhibit that talks about it. So I see that there's just a lot of potential there, and see that there's a lot of things that hopefully I could be able to support with my skill set and coming from a higher education background, being at UO, and also just being a Springfield resident, wanting to be involved. I've lived here for about 3.5 years. I moved to Oregon 4 years ago, and I just really find that there's a place within the library to utilize, or the museum, apologies for that, that I would be able to utilize my skills and be in a good place to support the work they're doing.
All right. Can you describe your understanding of the role you will have serving on the museum committee and how it relates to the work of the council?
Absolutely. As I said, I work in higher education and we love a good committee. We love to have that involvement. I serve on several at UO. One of the bigger ones is the campus planning committee. And much like we would be doing here is we work within ourselves and hear different proposals and talk through different things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we provide recommendations up to the folks that are the experts in that area. So we bring in different contexts, different areas of expertise and what we can do to ultimately advise and give a good suggestion. I see that as the same thing within this position, is being able to provide my content expertise and the ability I have. I've got a pretty extensive history in marketing and corporate communications and PR and those sorts of things and community building. And I feel like that really leans into what I could do to provide that context and to provide, hey, as a citizen, but also someone who works with young people and who recognizes the importance of folks recognizing their history, how I can provide that context into consideration for the folks that ultimately make the decisions at the higher levels.
Great, thank you. Last question. What do you see as current issues and challenges for the Springfield Museum?
I'm going to take a guess and say, it's always going to be funding as something that is a nonprofit based, but is also, donation based in what it does. It's free to go in, which I think is a fantastic resource and that should never change. But finding and identifying donors, people who would recognize the value, how that can work in, that's something that I do also within my work at UO, and finding ways to get people into the space. that was one of the first things when I moved to Springfield, that I was able to walk downtown from my apartment on Pioneer Parkway and go into the museum and be able to just walk through and just see and learn all of that. And not just, the Simpsons aspect of it, which was obviously neat as a kid of the 90s who grew up seeing that, but seeing that there, were big Springfield letters on the hill, and reading about how Mill Street was Main Street and how all of these different things changed. And it really just made me appreciate the city so much more as a new resident. And I really want to encourage that for new folks who move to the area, because we see that. We see people come here and want to be a part of the community, want to do things to improve it, but recognizing that you can only improve what you know historically. You've got to have an understanding and appreciation for what it is in order to want to make it better. And I think that's what I see within, is that if we can get more people to take a chance to see the space, to know what Springfield has been, where it can grow, that one location can do so much for new residents. And I think that that's a huge opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank y'all. Thank you for your consideration.
We will let you know.
Okay, and I believe Stacy Roth is in the Zoom now, so she's our next interview candidate.
Hello, Stacy.
Hi.
I will be asking the questions tonight. Are you ready?
Yes.
Why are you interested in continuing your service on the museum committee?
I think the committee and the museum and Maddie as the curator have really come a long way since she's been there. They've got so much has been going on at the museum and changed and improved, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so I think for me to continue my term would just help me to see some of this stuff through that has already been started. I'm born and raised in Springfield and went on to college to get a history degree. So I have an interest in that area. I've also volunteered at both the Springfield Museum and the Lane County History Museum. So it's just kind of a side passion of mine. And being on the committee has been a really great opportunity to further that involvement and be involved in what the museum is doing and what they're trying to do in the future.
Could you describe your understanding of the role you will have serving on the museum committee and how it relates to the work of the council?
Yeah, so what we've been doing as the committee so far is really helping to support Maddie in her work as the curator and in supporting what she has as a vision for the museum and what the council would like the museum to become, and kind of taking those ideas and putting them into place. And so we, as the committee, have helped with different fundraising things and with the strategic plan and the implementation plan and with different events that she has going on. So I would expect that work to continue into the next term.
And what do you see as issues or challenges the museum is facing?
I think COVID was a big challenge for the museum, obviously, because they were closed and still working limited hours at this point. So I think going forward, as we get the COVID situation under control, it will be a new challenge to kind of open back up to the public and do more events and outreach and build partnerships with other local organizations and business, and also take on more fundraising with the library and on their own, and possibly, starting new friends groups or what have you with the library. And then always the museum's challenge is how to tell the history of Springfield in an inclusive way that makes it connect with all of the people of Springfield and get them interested in history and also in the city.
Right. Great. Thank you so much for your time. We will be in touch as we make our decision. Have a great night.
You too.
And Emily, I believe we have how many positions here? 2 people for 3 positions, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm looking at the council. What do you guys think? Thumbs up? Yep.
Yep.
So I see a lot of head nods for bringing them both forward. So
Those resumes have so much talent in them.
yeah,
Exceptional.
th-
We're so lucky.
yeah, this committee's been amazing. So do you have what you need, Emily?
Yeah, that's all I need. Thank you so much.
Are you sure you don't want to stay around for interview round number 4?
I'm gonna let Aaron take that one.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right. Hello, Erin.
So I'm here with the Community Development Advisory Committee. We have 4 vacant positions. We received 3 applicants. 3 of those positions are for full 4-year terms, and 1 is for the remainder of a 2-year term. So the 3 applicants, the first one will be Tinker Plum. And I'll look to AJ to see if.
And Erin, unfortunately, I am not seeing her in the attendees list. So if
Okay.
everyone's comfortable, I do have Savannah Olson that I would be happy to pull up.
I think that would be a great idea.
Great.
And I will continue to check the attendee list for Tinker.
Thank you. Hello, Savannah.
Hello all, thank you for having us tonight to speak a little bit about these various committees.
Well, thank you for joining us. Are you ready for your first question?
I am.
Why are you interested in serving on the CDAC?
I think that my interest in the CDAC is both professional and personal. I am currently a Master's of Planning, Public Policy and Management student at the University of Oregon and a full-time University of Oregon employee. In that master's program, in my education, we of course cover a lot of material related to things like urban revitalization, into the development of community spaces and how to do that in a way that benefits the community at large. Personally, I'm also relatively local and have lived in Springfield for about a year now, have lived in Eugene for a long time and grew up relatively close to here. And I see a lot of the community needs I see that in my neighbors, I see in Springfield at large as being things that are very particularly relevant to this committee. So I think that I'm very interested in being involved in contributing to my local spaces and in helping our community to progress ideally in the ways that we all hope that it will in the next couple of decades.
Thank you. Could you describe your understanding of the role of Cdac and how it relates to the work of the council?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of digging on some of the more recent proposals that have been looked at. I was looking at some of the proposals about funding for home programs to support our unhoused populations. So by my understanding, this committee would largely be reviewing proposals like that in order to help make recommendations to the council about topics like unhoused population services, community development, resources to support lower income neighborhoods, low income housing, and topics like that, which I think is something I'd be really excited to do a deeper dive into for Springfield because it plays so well into my educational program and my personal interests.
And what do you see as the current issues and challenges for the city of Springfield?
I think that in terms of how it relates to this particular committee, that Springfield is facing a little bit of the same reckoning that the entire West Coast is, in that we I think in Oregon are at risk of turning into California, and that we need to sort of look at how we would like our neighborhoods to develop and grow in ways that support the current populations that live there, and not gentrify those populations out. I think that we have an opportunity to do a lot of, improvement and development of our neighborhoods and our community spaces, but that doing that within the realm of, caution to our working class families that currently are present here is really essential. And I think that that's also an incredibly difficult thing to do, which is why it is going to be such a challenge as we do that kind of work in Springfield.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
We'll let you know what we decide. Have a great night.
Thank you.
In checking the attendee list, I still don't see Tinker, so I will pull up Seth Thompson.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. We can't see you yet.
All right. Sorry about that. Hi, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
Hello, Seth. Well, thanks for being here. Are you ready for your first question?
I am. Thank you.
Why are you interested in serving on the Cdac?
Sure. So some quick background. I grew up in Thurston, Springfield, actually. And so grew up there my whole life, was a double duck. So I have a bachelor's in journalism and communication from the University of Oregon. I worked in marketing and communications for about half a decade for a local online retailer in Eugene. I decided to go back to school and study community planning. So I have a master's in community regional planning from the University of Oregon. And I basically, the whole goal of why I'm here today is to see if I could leverage my skill set and the knowledge I have that to aid the CDAC in their goals and objectives, which is, in my opinion, to provide better, improved, responsible housing opportunities for Springfield citizens. And so that's my primary focus today. Real quick background about myself. I'm currently an aviation planner for the Oregon Department of Aviation. I've been there for almost 2 years. So it may sound like it's not related to housing in any way, but what I do on a regular basis is talk to counties, cities, basically municipalities all around Oregon, and basically collaborate daily with planners. And so I understand basically how the language works. I understand how code works, and I have to basically read municipal code all the time to basically help the goals of my agency work with that of municipality. And so I think that's kind of how I can kind of bring my applicability to this position. Prior to that, I was a staff planner and associate planner with Marion County up in Salem, and got to work a lot with local businesses, a lot of housing opportunities in the urban growth boundary of the city of Salem, but a lot with, just everyday citizens, farmers, local businesses. Again, it's basically helping them get to where they want to be, and land use through land use and responsible land use planning. Prior to that, I was also a planning intern with Lane County, so I do have a little bit of local experience. So again, all of that, the whole goal of my experience so far is to basically aid the CDAC in pursuing its goals. And obviously, being from this town myself, I want to see it succeed. I've gotten to see, just so many new changes, new good changes in both Eugene and Springfield since I was small, and I just want to further expand that.
Great, thank you. Can you describe your understanding of the role Cdac has and how it relates to the work of the council? Sure. So my general understanding is the city receives HUD's development block grant funds and basically figures out how to allocate those responsibly for everything from housing opportunities to responsible development around the city. And the role of the CDAC is my understanding. We basically make recommendations to the city council on how to allocate those funds. And so basically, it sounds like a council member, a current council member, is present. I assume to kind of be the guiding light on the committee, and then the community members. I'm from Ward 1. Basically, will provide their opinion based on their background and based on where they live. And the goal is to get to a responsible conclusion. And what do you see as current issues and challenges around the work of the Cdac for the city of Springfield? Yeah, addressing affordable housing during the COVID era, I assume is probably number one. I have had an opportunity to review some minutes from a couple of the last city council meetings. So I've gotten to see what's on the docket lately, and
not just here, but nationally, it seems all the same. So, and then number two is probably, responsible land use development with a limited land use inventory. So I have pretty in-depth understanding of how Oregon's planning program works. I understand in depth how urban growth boundaries work and how that relates to city limits and the complications with expansion and so forth. So I get pretty well how the whole process works, and I understand that the city's probably in the middle of dealing with that. I've been following the newspaper, just the developments with the RFQ for the Glenwood Riverfront development project, and that has a ton of potential. 9 acres is a lot to work with, but probably the toughest part is how to make the toughest part of land use planning, responsible land use planning as Oregon, is how to make the best use, but playing by the rules with an inventory. Okay, and so I stood at the land use desk counter at Marion County for a year, and so I understand the concerns and just the concerns of everyday citizens, and why they can't do something, how they can do something. So I understand how to basically explain that process to everyday citizens. So the current challenges is basically trying to make Springfield a good place that accommodates the needs of both current Springfield citizens and future citizens. And affordable housing and responsible land use development are probably number 1 and 2, I assume.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time. We will deliberate and somebody will let you know.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Doing one last check, and at this time, I still do not see Tinker.
Okay. So with the 2 folks that we have across 4 positions, what is your, we're gonna have to go out for some more applicants, obviously, but what is your response to the 2 folks we have? Joe?
I was confused whether we're selecting new employees or committee members, but no, they're meaning that they're very, very well qualified and beyond. So, and plus when we have fewer applicants than positions, then it really makes the decision-making process quite simple. So yes, I'm good.
Okay, Leonard?
I agree with Councilor Pictionary. It's an embarrassment of riches. Well, let's take both of them.
All right, Steve?
I'm good too. Something I'm noticing all of our applicants tonight, they're University of Oregon degrees. They work at the University of Oregon, or they're long-term Springfield people. That's wonderful. Anyway, I support these 2.
Okay, great. Unless anybody has any other comments, I think you've got all the information you need, right, Erin?
Yeah, no, thank you for these 2. I guess, and maybe this isn't the right time to ask. I know there are interviews next week. I don't know if there's room, if we were to get a hold of Tinker, if there is room to interview them as well that night.
There should be room. So I would be comfortable bringing Tinker back if you can reschedule them.
Okay, great. I'll try.
All right, thank you. All right.
So Mayor, it appears our next group is the Historic Commission. Unfortunately, our staff person isn't here this evening, but as you can see from the AIS, there are currently 2 vacancies. It appears we have 1 applicant, which I believe is Leslie. So if the council is ready, I am happy to get that pulled up for you.
Let's bring Leslie on up.
Hi.
Hello. So I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, and the rest of the council is going to take some notes. Are you ready for your first question?
Yes, I am.
Why are you interested in serving on the Historic Commission?
I've actually wanted to do this since I moved to Springfield, I don't know, 6 years ago. I bought a house in the Washburn and all of a sudden found myself in a house with a little plaque in the front. And I started looking more and more into what that meant. And it's been really fun kind of learning about the neighborhood and the history. But even in the years I've moved here, there's been a lot of change in the neighborhood. And not that change is not good, but it certainly shifts the stories people are telling. And it really kind of put into perspective how fast places do change, how fast populations change, and how new stories get told. So that's, I think, important in Springfield, in that what we preserve and what we mark as history is just really important to reflect on. I also work at the U of O in the geography department. And another way I've kind of engaged with the information is to, I've actually assigned walking tours using some of the information on the website, tried to do some other activities with this. And I find that students, it's not very engaging for students. And the stories feel very, they're important and students like them, but the materials are very kind of, I guess they're not engaging, right? And so I want to find ways, I'm really interested in ways about how places tell stories about themselves and how you can kind of engage different populations in that. And to be honest, like, this has been a big issue nationally, not that we have the same kind of controversies here that other places have seen, but it's really making people ask those questions, like, what are we preserving and why? So.
All right, so could you describe your understanding of the role of the Historic Commission and how it relates to the work of the council?
So the Historic Commission meetings have actually been when I teach a class every term. So I haven't actually seen any of the meetings. But working with Historic Commission, to me, it sounds like being able to bring together kind of ideas, I would say talking to the community and kind of bringing people together to make suggestions to what the city council does have jurisdiction or purview over. But being able to really think about bringing people in, talking to the Historic Commission, and then deciding as a community how we want to move forward with that information.
And what are the current issues and challenges that you see regarding historic preservation for the city of Springfield?
So kind of what I already said is how we're talking about Springfield and how we're talking about the history of Springfield, which is great. There's a lot of rich history here, but I think creating a more inclusive, I keep using this word stories, but creating a more inclusive story that brings this really diverse community together in ways that I think are really needed. Yeah, that would be it.
Okay, I'm going to add one follow-up question based on your response.
Sure.
You mentioned that you teach a class when the commission meets. Are you going forward? Are you able to attend the Historic Commission meetings?
So I asked about that when I was applying for this, and I was told that it might be possible to move those times.
Okay.
It's a professional development or career readiness class that is taught college-wide, so it's hard for me to change those times, but I can figure things out too.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate you adding some commentary to that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk through this, and then we will definitely let you know.
Okay, great.
Have a great
Thank you.
night.
Thanks, you too.
All right. What questions do you guys have or comments? Leonard?
Would it be possible to talk to the chair of the Historic Commission, whoever that is, just about how logistically difficult it would be to adjust the start time of the meetings?
I don't know. Damien, I don't know if you have more information you can share on that.
Well, they're at 10 o'clock, so I don't go to them either. I just, if I need to speak to somebody or whatever, I'll shoot an email. Can't really say I've done that much yet, but I mean, I do read the notes, and I think that you know, as we move forward and think about equity, we're going to have people who can't be at all these meetings, and that's what technology is for. And so let's use it for some good to be able to diversify these boards and commissions.
So,
Yeah.
If I can make a recommendation here and see what people think of this, is maybe we can let Damien connect with the Historic Commission chair and kind of have the conversation about, are they moving it? 10 a.m. is a hard meeting time for a group of volunteers to make.
Everybody.
Yeah. And maybe we
That's
should
awful.
and before we just put somebody up, maybe we can give you a little bit of space to have that conversation and talk about the logistics of changing. Would that work?
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll do it. I mean, I think they're pretty open because, I mean, I went to 1 or 2 meetings before they switched to 10 o'clock. And so I'm sure that if they did a poll that it might be easy to move it. But if not, I mean, I personally don't think that should be a reason why somebody should be kept from being on it.
She looks like a great candidate.
Yeah.
I just think maybe we should know what we're all getting into before the deal's done. All right. Any other comments? All right, AJ.
So what I'm hearing, if with your permission, is I will reach out to the staff person and see if we can send out a poll to the committee in regards to changing their meeting time. Until I have information on that, are you, and I'm sorry if I missed it, are you holding off on requesting an appointment?
Yeah, so let's hold on the Historic Commission until next Monday. We're gonna end up having a longer conversation with about committee appointments, because that SPAC committee appointments, like, they've got extra folks. So I could see that the conversation after we interview them kind of going a couple of different ways. And maybe we could revisit this, the Historic Commission at that point.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a point of contention. Nobody else was asked if they could make these meetings. And so we can't assume that based off of them being in the afternoon that anybody who applied would be able to make the meetings. And it just happened that she was forthcoming with it. And so if we're doing that for the Historic Commission, then we need to do it for everybody. It's only fair.
Go ahead, Joe.
I have to agree. I think, you know, we've always been trying to be accommodating, but to switch the pitch for the whole organization because a meeting doesn't fit an applicant's schedule, not that I'm saying she's not an appropriate applicant, but the schedule was there present prior to her application. And that would be something if, I mean, that's their determination. I mean, it's like if they can't make a meeting, they can't make a meeting and should not even be applying if they can't do it. Otherwise, again, like Damien said, then if we're going to apply a special circumstance for one applicant, then let's just, every applicant that comes that applies then should be given that same opportunity, and we can start switching around the meetings all the time. I don't understand the logic behind it. So that's just me.
All right, Leonard. And then we'll go to Mary Lee. I think I saw her hand wave here.
Well, I hope I'm not putting words in Councilor Pitts' mouth, but I think he was saying that you should go ahead and put her on the council, despite the fact that or on the commission, despite the fact that she can't make the meetings. Is that right, Councilor Pitts?
That's exactly what I was saying. I mean, it's not like people are fighting to get on any of these committees, as we see. And if somebody wants to, you know, be a part of something, we should give them an opportunity.
I'm going to go Mary Lee first and then Joe.
Yeah. First, I just want to say that I didn't get the impression from her that she felt entitled. You know, that she didn't come across like, well, I can't make the meeting, so you need. She asked ahead of time if it would be possible, and so she's willing to see how it might work. And I think we owe her the same courtesy back. And if she gets on it and she finds out that she's not as purposeful in the position because she doesn't have the time, then she can make that, she can make, I feel comfortable that she could make that decision. But at the same time, a lot of these committees, Historic Commission included, do things outside the meetings that she would be perfectly capable of taking care of. So I'm comfortable with going ahead and having her appointed and see how it works.
Very good then. Joe? And then I'll come back to Steve.
Yeah, so it's on the application if they can make the meetings. Right, and so, and she indicated, I can see it here, I think she indicated she can. But and I'm not trying to exclude her, Leonard, it just, and I acknowledge what Damien said, maybe I just said it in different words. I'm okay with, she wants to be on the committee, I'm okay if she can make the meetings, that's great. But I'm just saying is I don't think we should shuffle meeting times around because one person may have difficulty making a meeting, that's all. I'm not trying to exclude her. I'm saying, hey, join, but also keep in mind that if we're appointing this person and handing her off to where staff may now have to deal with an attendance issue, then we're going to be faced with a shortage or another posting down the road that causes more staff time too. That's fine, but I just didn't want to see a bunch of committee meetings, reporting times and dates, et cetera, to be shifted around because we have a scheduling issue for one applicant when they know going in that these are preset meetings and times. That's all.
All right, Steve.
I've been in a lot of committees, and within the committee, we will sometimes shift a little bit to make everybody get there on time. And it happens a lot. I'm sure it could happen in this situation too. So I would let her be on there. But the other comment about Damien says about people being on committees and not having to go to the meetings, I don't like that because they vote on issues. And if they haven't been at the meetings to get the information and make a decision, that's awkward to me.
Okay, so let me recap what I've heard and see, if I've got it right. So it sounds like people like, she's a great candidate, right? And the issue of scheduling just happened to come out based on her answer, right? So let's just all recognize that we happen to stumble into this. It sounds like the preference for folks is let's put her on the committee and then let the committee sort it out. And if we still have, if it turns into an issue, if you will, then we can figure it out at that point. Am I hearing? I'm looking around and I'm.
Yep.
And then, okay. AJ, it sounds like we have a change of plans.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Don't worry. We'll keep you on your toes. All right. I think that was the last one. So our regular meeting is not until 7. So we will, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. We will be on the same link and then we can reconvene at 7. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
I'm going to call the city council work session to order, our city council regular session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Pitts.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Councilor Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Stair.
Here.
Councilor Woodrow.
Here.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Here.
All right, everybody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the republic
for which it
for which it stands, one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and
and
justice
for all.
for all.
As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There is one time this evening designated for public testimony, and that will be listed as business from the audience on the agenda. If you're joining us from online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use your raise hand feature when the agenda item is called. When we call on you, please state your name and ward or general location for the record. All right, next item, please.
Mayor, the next item is Springfield Upbeat. We have one item, it's mayor's recognition.
All right, if you can bring it up.
And Interim Chief Heppel, if you wouldn't mind putting your camera up.
We have a surprise guest, everybody. It's Chief Heppel.
And trying to get my camera to come up. Awesome. Thing here. Sorry about that. Hey, there we go.
Hey, well, thanks for joining us. AJ, can you bring it up, please?
I am going to ask Neil because I don't have what we're bringing up.
We have this completely under control.
Is this the fire problem Nancy wanted me to talk with you about, Mayor?
It was pressing.
Sorry, Mayor, we're having a couple of technical difficulties on this side.
How good you're seeing a show tune, Chief Heppel, to
Yeah, probably not good. Not good.
All right, we're going to give it about 30 more seconds and then we're going to improvise. We're going to go off script here. So as many of you guys, as many people know, Chief Heppel has been serving as the interim chief of the fire department. We brought him up here tonight as part of mayor's recognition so that we could present him as a letter with a letter and thank you for all the additional work. That's what we're working on bringing up right now. So while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and read it, and then I will open it up to the council to say nice things about Chief Heppel because, all right. On behalf of the Springfield City Council and the City Council, City of Springfield leadership, it's my honor tonight to recognize Eugene Springfield Fire Chief Chris Heppel's exemplary service as interim chief. Chief Heppel was selected to serve as the interim fire chief and lead the department, providing critical fire and life safety services for the communities of Springfield and Eugene. Over 2.5 years, he served. The challenges facing our communities reached historic heights. Chief Heppel's experience, commitment, leadership were instrumental in helping to ensure our community's needs were always at the forefront of every decision. During his tenure as interim, Chief Heppel took the responsibility of incident command for COVID-19 in the Holiday Farm Emergency Operations Center. He oversaw the rollout of COVID-19 vaccinations with Eugene Springfield fire personnel providing vaccine doses to more than 1,900 individuals on site at the Emergency Services Training Center. He was also at the helm for the Oregon firestorm and supported an agency that went on 8 wildfire conflagrations in one season. In addition to leading during the pandemic and historic fire seasons, Chief Heppel never lost sight of the day-to-day needs and goals. He oversaw the replacement of critical fire safety equipment, was instrumental in successful IAFF contract negotiations, and improved relationships with the rural fire service agencies through his work with the Lane Fire Defense Board. He also developed a budget reduction lens for the department, which focuses on sustaining vital internal support services, expanding entry-level employment access while maximizing employee retention, and retaining direct service delivery. He reallocated basic life support service personnel to the Springfield community to improve service. Chief Heppel is currently the 2nd Vice President for the Oregon Fire Chiefs Association and remains a dedicated public servant with Eugene Springfield Fire. For some, leadership is a learned skill refined over years. For Chief Heppel, leadership is an innate skill set the communities of Springfield and Eugene have greatly benefited from. It's an honor to know and work with Chief Heppel, and I'm grateful we had the right leader at the right time to serve our communities. Thank you. And I'm going to open this up here in a minute, but I just wanted to say on a personal level, right, I'm really grateful that you've been leading the department the last 2.5 years, and answering every question and helping us through some of the hardest times this community's ever known. So thank you. Marilee?
Yes, you kind of squeezed the whole career into 2.5 years. I don't think there's anything you didn't do in the last 2.5 years or that you weren't confronted with in the last 2.5 years. And I personally, and speaking on behalf of the community, Springfield community, couldn't be more grateful for the responsiveness, the personal touch that you put on everything and how much you cared, and the leadership, because I know that there were times when there have to have been times when you were just reaching out as much as in your own mind as to what to do next or how to make the next decision. So I thank you very much. You've been a phenomenal example for everybody underneath you, to see what can be done and how well it can be done. So thank you. And we're going to miss having you as chief.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate it.
Joe?
Chief, sorry, I'm already going to apologize, but I'm going to take a little bit of time. This man had, I'm not going to apologize. I'm going to take the time I need. This man had got this job dumped in his lap almost overnight. He grabbed it. I'm sure he said a few words and went, okay, well, here we go. And I got to tell you now, during the fire, for example, the chief and I was in his presence every day during that entire fire season, pretty much without exception, I think, Chris. And I watched him perform, and I watched him he was steadfast, and his decisions were solid. He didn't guess at anything, they were solid. But I'm also going to steal a little of his thunder because, a guy like him, our agency, our firefighters, it wasn't him, it was our firefighters that did an exceptional job all the time, and they did it for him as well as themselves. He brought up that standard that made them shine and made them perform exceptionally. And so my hat's off to the firefighters that work for him, because they do respond like that, and that's only because of that type of leadership that he displayed. I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed with our firefighters, and I think that he was a key component as to how our firefighters perform, because I got to tell you, though, just like cops, they'll perform like their leadership performs, really. And so that being said, seeing him every day, I was just amazed as to what an exceptional job he did and how much care he put into it. And then moving from one catastrophe to the next, and then to turn around and you ask the man to be in a chief position for 2.5 years, which is brutally long to ask and darn near cruel to ask a person to perform in that position and at that performance level for that length of time. That in itself shows the stamina and the care he has for this community, regardless of his own personal well-being, for that matter. So he put his job, our city, before himself, obviously. So if it sounds like I'm saying a lot of praise and et cetera, a whole bunch, it's because that's exactly how I feel. He did an exceptional job, and I watched it. It wasn't someone else telling me. It wasn't something that I've heard, and it wasn't because something came out on the other end as, oh, okay, we're okay now, so he must have did a good job. And I watched it. So I'll say as a witness that we have an exceptional person here, and that his staff are exceptional because of him. There, I'm done.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate that.
Corey?
So everything has been said. I also deeply appreciate the leadership and the stability that Chief Heppel has brought to a very challenging time and a somewhat challenging police department, a somewhat challenging fire and life safety department. And in addition to what's been said, I've also really appreciated the candid conversations prior to my joining council, your presentations at budget committee, and just being able to just talk about the real things in really accessible ways and not shy away from any of the challenging questions, and talk about what was really happening and the real issues that were going on were so incredibly helpful for me. And I also feel another way of serving the Springfield community by letting us all see and be a part of that, and just trusting us with the real information. And so I really appreciated that. And I have said more than a couple times to Nancy, couldn't we just keep Chief Heppel? And she has made it clear that that was not in your plans. So I'm like, can we just keep the chief? He's doing such a great job. So thank you. I've appreciated working with you, and I just wish you the very best.
Leonard?
To what everybody else has said, I just want to give my gratitude as well. There had to have been times that you were thinking I didn't sign up for any of this. And so I want to say without any fear of seeming melodramatic at all, that you and your men and your firefighters, your women as well, you may have saved this town. And so I feel immense gratitude toward all of you, and thanks for your service, Chief.
Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we're going to get you a copy of the letter, and again, really, thank you so much. I appreciate you jumping on and at a moment, to be recognized.
Yeah, and thank you to you, Mayor, as well as councilors, and to the city manager, Nancy. And it's been a privilege. It certainly is to sit in this seat and steer the ship for a little while. Has been very educational and enlightening, and expanded my own knowledge and experience. And Councilor Piscineri is right, and that is, it's the team that brought this whole thing together. That fundamental leadership component of surround yourself with good people, and they're going to take you to places, and that's exactly what they did. So certainly I tip my hat to the team, and I look forward to continuing to work with that great team, as well as all y'all here in the future.
Thank you very much. Have a great night. All right, next item, please.
Mayor, the next item is the consent calendar.
Somebody says anything, I will make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Moe and seconded by Councilor Piscineri. Neil, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilor Pitts.
Aye.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Stair.
Aye.
Councilor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councilor Piscineri.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Next item, you have no public hearings this evening, so your next item is business from the audience.
All right, we'll give it a minute to see if there's any hands that pop up. And if you're interested in testifying, now would be the time to raise your hand and Neil can call you up. I am not seeing anybody, Neil.
Yes, Mayor, we do not appear to have any hands this evening for business from the audience.
Okay. Next item, please.
The next item then would be business from the city council. Any updates?
I'm looking around. Any updates from council? Very good. Next item, please.
The next item is business from the city manager. There's two items. The first one is the Georgia Pacific Natural Area 2021 Master Plan, and Monica Sather is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'll just take a moment to recap why we're here for this item. The request before you to adopt the master plan comes from the city's co-ownership of the property, along with Willamette Lane and the Springfield Utility Board. The version of the master plan we discussed at the June 28th work session about whether the plan reflected the city's interest as a co-owner remains virtually unchanged since that work session. And to recap those interests, they were to make sure the plan afforded opportunities to maintain and improve water quality and adequate flow levels, especially with our streams and rivers adjacent to the property. Another interest was to manage vegetation, another to manage and enhance wetlands, to partner with our environmental services division on educating park visitors was another big one. And lastly, to make sure public access to the site remains convenient and improves while remaining safe and also respecting neighbors. The only changes in the version proposed for adoption are the addition of the agency logos you see on the cover page, and as well a statement that clarifies the timeline for the equestrian pilot program, which Willamette Lane is continuing to evaluate. An immediate outcome of adopting the master plan will provide the framework for the terms of the equestrian use in a longer term, broader intergovernmental agreement for the property. And that's your next agenda item from the city attorney's office, who will speak to the status of that agreement. The longer term outcomes could be grant funding, design changes we may see in the future, and renaming the property if this gets adopted. With that, I'll just say thank you for your time this evening and for your time on this overall effort. I can pull up any visuals with the document included if helpful, and wanted to mention we also have Christina Bowe, Willamette Lane's project manager for the master plan, and Eric Adams, the planning parks and facilities director at Willamette Lane, in attendance. They're also available to answer questions if you have any, and I'll leave it with that and want to open it up to any questions you have for us before making a motion.
Are there any questions?
A document, fantastic document, a lot of work.
Thank you, and thank you to Willamette Lane. They lifted that, and yeah, appreciate that.
Very good. Steve, I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve a resolution adopting the Georgia Pacific Natural Area 2021 Master Plan.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilor Moe and seconded by Councilor Pictionary. Neil, could you call the roll, please?
Councilor Pitts.
Aye.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Stair.
Aye.
Councilor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Next item is any other business from the city manager.
No additional business, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Then our next item is business from the city attorney. We have one item there. Item number 1, extension of equestrian pilot project at the Georgia Pacific Natural Area. Christina Kraz is here for the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is related to the item that you just voted on to adopt the master plan for the same property, the Georgia Pacific Natural Area. This is just a 4th extension of the intergovernmental agreement that we've had in place that allows the pilot program for equestrian uses to continue. We will, Willamette Lane and Sub and the city will be working together on a long-term intergovernmental agreement for management of the property. It will depend on the sub board's decision regarding whether they want to continue as joint owners or figure out a path forward with the city and Willamette Lane as the only joint owners moving forward. And there's no proposed changes to the intergovernmental agreement except the timeline. This is something that sometimes would be on consent calendar, but wanted to make sure that it came after your approval of the master plan. Because if you didn't approve the master plan, then we may make changes to the temporary IGA. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Corey?
I was going to try to raise my hand, but it was easier to just raise my hand. So this is a pilot program, and is it an existing pilot program? Because I know there's been like equestrians on whatever that Willamette Lane is, and people riding horses down there. So I'm curious as to how long it's been a pilot program, how long it may continue to be about pilot program. And this is all, I'm asking all the questions. I'm pulling a Joe. And what are the issues that might be keeping it from becoming a not pilot program?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer those questions. So this was originally put in place in May of 2020. That was the first time the intergovernmental agreement allowing for the pilot program. Before that, there was apparently equestrian use that was ongoing without permission of any of the property owners. And so in response to feedback from the community, Willamette Lane decided to ask for the city and subs agreement to a pilot program to allow some at least on a non-permanently approved basis, but a pilot basis, the equestrian use. So there's no change to the way that that has been going since May of 2020. That program has been extended in September of 2020 and then again in January of this year to allow more time for the city of Willamette Lane and sub to work together to figure out how long-term equestrian uses may or may not be allowed at the property. And so that is what we will be working on in the next year. Now that the master plan is adopted, that talks about how some of those equestrian uses might be accommodated, it allows us to have a more specific discussion about what does that look like long-term and what parties should have what role in that, making that potentially permanent. And the city council will ultimately approve that long-term IGA that will come before the council for input and approval. So we hope that within the next year, that's the goal of this extension, is to allow a year. And certainly if we get that agreement done earlier, we can terminate this pilot program IGA when the new permanent IGA takes effect. And Willamette Lane and sub have already approved this fourth extension. So we're the last to bring it to our approving entities.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, are there any other questions? Joe? You're on mute, Joe.
I decided to raise my hand to tease Corey. I don't have a question. Thanks.
Get me nervous there.
It's because you don't have a question. If you had 4 questions, you'd be all about it. Right?
Hey, you ready for me now?
Yes, please.
Always.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement, IGA, for a pilot project allowing Willamette Lane to provide escrow services at the Georgia Pacific Natural Area. I couldn't pronounce it. You know what I meant.
Second, whatever he said.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Moe and seconded by Councilor Pictionary. Neil, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Councilor Pitts.
Aye.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Stair.
Aye.
Councilor Woodrow.
Yes.
And Councilor Pictionary.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Next item, please.
Any other business from the city attorney's office?
There is no other business.
All right, then it sounds like we are done for the evening. Thanks, everybody, very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.